pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, again, good evening. I am Andrea Stanishek, a co-president of the Yankton Education Association, also known as YEA. YEA is a professional organization of a number of Yankton's teachers. We work hard for educators so that they can continue to work hard for their students. This forum is a part of our effort to help voters make informed decisions at the upcoming elections. I will now turn the meeting over to our moderator, Chelsea Halber, YEA member.
All right, so we are going to just go over our, ground rules for the forum. Sound up. I don't know how to do that. Get closer to your mouth. Stand closer to it.
Okay. Maybe even hold it.
Okay, so our forum instructions. So candidates, you are going to have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for closing statement, and then 2 minutes for each question. Everything straightforward, 2 minutes. Opening and closing statements will be done in the order in which you are sitting for ease. So we will start with Sarah. The timekeeper is Kendra Frick, so she will have cards for you, time cards, red, obviously it's your staff, and she'll have a 30-second yellow card for you. So you've got 30 seconds left with your yellow card. Let's see. If you continue going after the red card, I will say thank you and move on to the next speaker. And then we will, personal references about other candidates are out of order. And then with respect for everyone's time, we would like to begin closing statements at roughly 8 o'clock. So we'll get through as much as we can in that amount of time. So everyone, please make sure your cell phones are off or on silent. Please remain quiet throughout the forum. After all closing statements, you may clap for all candidates if you wish. You are encouraged to submit questions to the candidates on the provided index cards. Questions must be addressed to all candidates and must apply to issues for their particular office. If you need an additional index card or you have a question to be collected, raise your hand and someone will come grab it from you. And we'll go through as many questions as time allows, and if we have similar things, we'll try to put them together. All right, so we will begin with opening statements. We will start with Sarah.
Is this working? All right, I'm Sarah Sarda, and I currently serve as the president of the Yankton School Board. I've been on the school board for 11 years, went through a few elections. If you remember, the last one was quite a difficult election, but it ended up being and working out quite well. I am married to Dave Sarda. You might know him. He is a city commissioner. He had been on the commission for about 12 years, took 3 years off, and he really liked to be in the know, so we got back on. We have 3 children. 2 are going to college. One's a non-traditional and one's a traditional student at Augustana, and our son is at the University of South Dakota. We also have a son, Lucas. He was diagnosed with autism at 3 years old, and so that is how really I got involved with education and special ed. And so through that, I have been pretty active in the disability community and being an advocate. I've been appointed by both Governor Noem and Governor Dugard to some special ed committees, summer studies, developmental disability committee, and all sorts of different committees. My husband and I are very active in town. We were not lifelong, but we were longtime members of the Sertoma Club, and so active in giving back our time. I've been very active in my church. I've served out in our parish council. My children, up until 8th grade, went to Sacred Heart School, and I was on the school board there too. So I've had a lot of opportunity to lead. I served for almost 17 years at Mount Marty. It was Mount Marty College when I was there. It has since been university. I was the vice president for student affairs. And I had a medical issue that kind of turned my life in a different way, took it a little trajectory. So I did have the opportunity during that time to take care of my mother and take care of my granddaughter. Truly was a part of that sandwich generation.
Good evening. Thank you everyone for coming. This is great to see such a wonderful crowd. My name is Julie Auk and I currently represent District 18, each and every one of you, in the House of Representatives. I am I'm a lifelong resident of Yankton County. Actually, this was my high school. Attended Utica School and then went to Lincoln because Utica School, of course, is a 2-room schoolhouse. And it went to the 5th grade, so I attended 6th grade at Lincoln Elementary, went to Yankton Middle School, which is now an assisted living center, so that tells how old I am, and this was my high school. Then I continued on to Mount Marty College, got married to my husband Gary. We farm in the northwest corner of Yankton County, where we've raised our 4 children. They're grown, we have 7 grandchildren, and I'm a 3rd generation business owner here in Yankton, where my grandmother started the business, and she was a former superintendent of Gayville Vollen, and also a farmer's wife, and then took the business over from my grandmother. My mother did. I took the business over from my mother. So 3 women running a business here in Yankton. So once again, an honor to serve you as District 18 representative, and looking forward to doing that again with your vote. And I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Julie. I'm Paul Harms. I look out, there's a lot of familiar faces out there, either in the classroom or you were parents, and I talk to you. I had the pleasure of teaching in the system for 31 years, and then I started sub for another 7 years until COVID hit. And those of you who remember me, I had a guy just remind me the other day, you were the face of COVID, Mr. Harms, is what he told me. And so I kind of said, thank you. Not first, because I wasn't sure about that. I've been married to my wife for 51 years. She ran a daycare in Yankton for 12 years at home, and then she transferred to Mount Marty where she ran it. And then, as she puts it, they decided to have football, so they closed their daycare. And so I've done that. I have served in a number of different positions here in Yankton. I've been a member of Sacred Heart School Board. When they reformed it, I was on the school board for 7 years. And then besides that, I served a number of positions in the parish. I also served with the Knights of Columbus, and the list goes on. I've worked on state level with education. I was a member of the infamous Social Studies Committee that Governor Nome dumped them all and created her own little committee of people who weren't from South Dakota. I'd like to think I give you a different voice, something that hasn't been there for a while. I think I can do that for you. I like to listen to people. I will talk to anybody. Only have I've been knocking doors. I've had over 1,000 doors we've knocked on. Only got slammed on twice. But I'm still here and I'll live with it. But I want to thank you very much for being here tonight. And one thing I want to make sure, no matter what happens up here, make sure you vote.
Is what you said to those parents, was it good? Mr. Harms? Is what you said to the parents good? Was it good what you said? Okay. Just checking.
Always.
Okay, always good. My name is Lauren Nelson. I am the Republican candidate for State Senate for District 18. I ran and won the primary in June. I am a teacher. I have a double major from Dakota State University in elementary education and special education. And I also have my master's in educational administration from the University of South Dakota. And I always say, anytime I talk about that, that is a great program. Even as a Jackrabbits fan, I will give honor to USD because that was a great program, prepared me very well. I have been a teacher in many settings. I have taught in the public school. I have taught in private schools. I was also an administrator in the private schools. And I have also homeschooled. I am married to David. We've been married for 30 years. We farm north of Yankton. On that farm, we have raised 3 children. Mary, who is here tonight from Boston, She works for the Freedom Trail as Mrs. John Hancock. My daughter Beatrice is a senior at Dort. She's majoring in animal science and hopes to come home and be a boss to her father someday. And then my son, who graduated from Yankton last year, is a freshman at Norfolk in Northeast Nebraska, majoring in electrical. I am currently on the Planning and Zoning Board for Yankton County. I have also been on the Solar Task Force and Wind Task Force, and I'm treasurer for the Yankton County Sharpshooters. And I hope on November 5th, the voters of District 18 will make me their senator. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Mike Stevens, and Paul, I didn't know that was you when I slammed the door. You know, I'm married to Linda, and she, as you know, has taught school for 42 years, 32 of them here in Yankton at Neal Elementary School. My mom was a one-room school teacher. My brother taught school over in Tyndall for a while before he became a chiropractor, so I have education kind of running through my veins. Linda and I's children have all graduated to Yankton High School. We have 6 grandkids. I've been practicing law with my partner John Blackburn for over 47 years. I've been involved in a lot of different community activities. I'm currently the vice chairman of the Senior Center, which is a great organization. I served on what used to be the Chamber of Commerce, but Thrive, and I've also served on the Yankton Foundation Board. I've served in the legislature for 10 years. During that period of time, I am the current assistant Speaker of the House. I've served as chairman of Judiciary as well as chairman of the Education Committee. I've been on the State Affairs and involved in a lot of different activities in the legislature. You know, I think education is such an important part. You know, we talk about what our future of our state's going to be, and it all really is all about our kids. And virtually every aspect of any bill really centers around the education part of it, whether it's housing, whether it's dealing with economic development, whatever it is, it all deals with our kids, and they're really an important part of it. So remember, when you go to vote, that I like Mike.
All right, so we will move on to our question and answer portion. I would like to remind our candidates to hold the mic up because they're losing you in the audience when you have it down too low. So, our first question. Several of our neighboring rural states, including Iowa and Nebraska, have passed legislation to create school voucher programs. Lawmakers introduced a bill, HB 1250, last year that would direct state dollars to educational empowerment accounts, which are those vouchers. The estimated cost of this bill was over $109 million. Would you support such legislation and why? And we'll start with Julie, so we'll go down.
Great. All right. That bill, it's a voucher program. I think the main thing you need to understand about education is it comes in 3 parts. According to our South Dakota Article 8, the Constitution, Article 8 of the Constitution, all of your South Dakota property taxes, half of them go to the school district. The rest of the money is made up with state and federal money. The average cost, this was numbers from 2023, it's about between $12,000 and $13,000 a year to educate a child. Children that are not attending public school, the state does not pay tax dollars sales tax dollars to that school district. So if a child is homeschooled or in private school, the school's not receiving that funding anyway. It's going back into the general fund. So a voucher program, I do not believe it'll cost $100 million, but because currently we have reallocated another $2 million to our tax credit program that's basically facilitated through insurance companies that receive a tax credit to contribute to a program where children can apply for a scholarship to attend a private school, and that is $5 million. So, and those funds are distributed every year, and we did increase it, like I said, from 3 million to 5 million this year. Just today, as a matter of fact, well, actually it was yesterday, the Educational Choice for Children Act went into the Federal House of Representatives to ensure that tax credits in individuals' federal tax return could be used to help fund private or homeschool children. So, you know, I do support parents' choice.
As a longtime educator, I'm gonna say no. For the pure and simple reason, South Dakota can't afford to run two systems. Think about it. You're gonna lose students, and plus the other thing that happened in Iowa, the first thing the private schools did was raise their tuition up to the amount that they were gonna get. They went for $109 million. They had applications for over $250,000. I mean, $250 million. Vouchers, you know, private schools, homeschools, that's a choice parents make. They want choice, they have it. I took that choice for my children at the time we first moved to Yankton. And there are reasons I did that. But when the middle school came around, that was the first adult choice my kids got to make. They could either stay in Sacred Heart or they could move to middle school. They both moved to middle school by their own choice. Not my wife and I. We weren't happy about it, we let it. And that's the type of choice you should give your children. And you want to make it, that's the basic thing, is it's a choice a parent has to make. And sacrifice. That's why I worked every summer, so I could pay that tuition. And that's a choice parents can make.
I'm going to stand because I'm a teacher and I work better when I stand. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Julie had said and the fact that this money we're talking about is money that the schools do not receive. It's not like the schools base their budgets or programs on this money and then the state takes it back. This money stays in the they call it a black pot, the budget, pot, and it stays there and it's used for whatever. It's not earmarked for K-12 education. So why not take that money, give it to parents who are educating their kids at home or in a private school? At least it's getting used for K-12 education. And if, legislators can't wrap their mind around that or get behind that, here's the thing, I'm glad Mr. Clemish came in, county commissioner. If you've sat at those meetings, I'm sorry, didn't mean to point you out, but you sit at those meetings and you listen to the unfunded mandates that the state puts on our county, and one of them is taking care of students who have found trouble with the law. And they have to send them up to Sioux Falls, and I don't know what it is right now, a couple $100,000 that we're paying as a county. Give this money back to the counties and let them use it to pay for those kids, because those kids still need to get educated. So why not let them use that money? Give it back to the counties, let them use that money to educate those kids. Or give it to the counties, let them use it for the Divergent program that's right now in Yankton. I just read an article here a couple weeks ago how successful those programs are. And what that is it's a program where they head off kids that are going in the wrong direction. They head them off and try to get them into the right direction. And so why not use that money for children instead of just letting it sit in a pot and get used for whatever a legislator or a group of legislators would like to use it for. Let's use it for K-12 education.
Well, thank you. The Constitution of South Dakota requires that the state has to provide a free education for K through 12. And we're not required, nor have I ever support vouchers to be used by parents to send their children wherever they so desire. I'm not against people who homeschool or send it to any other school system. In fact, I set up the Missouri Valley school system. I did the legal work for them. We have a great educational system in South Dakota, and yet it continues to be underfunded. And our state cannot afford a voucher system. And those who think there's just money sitting around, we can use it for K-12, doesn't understand the budget process whatsoever. That's why I sit down right here, so I'm getting a little closer. If the voucher was passed, it is estimated by the LRC that it would cost a minimum of $109 million. And this amount it can be more, it probably would be more, because it does not take into account the students who would be switching from the public schools to the private, important and would include the homeschoolers. When you take into consideration that we're building a new prison, that's gonna cost anywhere from $900 million to $1 billion. We have Medicaid expansion that we now have to cover, about $60 million, and we lost about $100 million when we cut the taxes. Those are funds that we could have been using for the public schools. You know, the state has already provided through the insurance company taxes about $5 million for private schools. But what really bothers me the most about it is those who want vouchers, they don't want any accountability whatsoever. Our school system has to have, all the kids have to be accountable. We have to be accountable for them. What they want to do is hand out this free money. They can use however they want to use that money, and there's no accountability whatsoever. This state doesn't have that money just to throw around, and there's no big pot out there that we can be used. South Dakota is very lean and mean when it comes to it, and clearly, as was just represented, our counties need money too. But I'm tired of our state being the 51st in the nation as it relates to salaries, and that's what would happen if we had vouchers.
First of all, I appreciate YEA for doing this, and right out of the gate, you get a big one about vouchers. And I absolutely would not support vouchers. I don't think it's good for our system. I don't think it's necessarily good for children. I worked at the University of Dallas, which is a very conservative Christian or Catholic college. Great proportion of those students were homeschool students. There are some very legitimate homeschooling and some amazing students that come from that. If you would ask some administrators in our high school, you'll find that a lot of the people that homeschool option, they homeschool because they're just tired of school and they can go out. And I'd like to know the graduation rates. You're gonna find that the graduation rates, once a student goes into homeschool, is considerably lower than if they go through the public school. I think this is really interesting. I'm guessing we're gonna hear a question about the grocery tax a little later, because we've heard all sorts of statistics about how much money we're going to lose with this grocery tax and how it's going to really devastate our public schools. And I'm thinking, boy, that's how many, 171 million at the lowest they had, and all of a sudden we're going to find $109 million to pick up to give to homeschoolers when we can't afford to give away a grocery tax to the people most needing it. There is no money sitting out there. It goes to different places, and there's necessities everywhere. And I just don't believe it. And again, I'm a supporter of private schools. When we moved to Yankton, it was right around the time our children were going to preschool, I had worked in mission-driven, faith places. It was important for me, for my child to have that. But I will not allow the public to pay for my faith decisions. And if you think it'll be difficult in Yankton, those people in Gayville, Vollen, and Wakanda, Irene, this could devastate the budgets if there was a charter school that started and you take away from already difficult funding. I think it would be terrible for public schools.
All right, and so Sarah was right. The next question is about that tax. So if taxes on consumables are removed, how will schools and most levels of government survive? Wouldn't there be, huge cuts looming? So basically, how are we going to cover the loss of that funding? And we'll start with Mr. Marnes.
Thank you. I've looked at this grocery tax. There's only 2 states in the entire United States that have a grocery tax. It's us and Mississippi. We're always fighting with Mississippi to see who's going to be the lowest paid teachers. And right now, we're winning. The grocery tax is a difficult thing to say no to. Because right now, people that are in poverty or lower economic areas, they pay up to 30 to 40% of their income on groceries. People that are in upper classes pay maybe 5 to 7% of their income on food. Figure it out. Think of the elderly population. I'm still torn on this, and I don't know what to do, but one of the problems is exactly if we lose it, where are we going to come up with money? And there I've heard 3 different figures. One figure was $109 million. Another figure was $179 million. Now another got out, I think it was the grocery people and small businesses got together, and and they're up over $300 million. So what do? I don't know if we could come up with $300 million. Mike and Julie would probably know more about that. If we had to replace $300 million. I don't think we could. I would probably vote no, but right now I know a lot of people who are looking at their income. And when you're paying that kind of tax, you know, look at, we got the, what was it, $190 back? I'm taking off 0.2%, so keep that in mind.
Last week I was talking to a family from Wakanda, and they have 4 boys, and she was telling me about her grocery bill and what she's paying for her grocery bill, and again, just that thought came to my mind about how much taxes that they are paying for those 4 boys to eat. And also talking to business owners in small communities where the main retail industry is a convenience store, is food and things like that, especially I'm thinking of, I think it's the One Stop in Menno. It would be devastating for them. You know, I agree with Mr. Harns here that Julie might probably have a better idea of how that money would be made up. I would love to give a tax break to people going and getting their groceries. Every little bit helps. But the thing about it with this is the fact that, again, it would not be, tobacco would no longer be taxed, which doesn't make sense. It's not, to me, you don't need tobacco to live. And also too, when you're talking about gummies and marijuana, medical marijuana, things like that. So I'm not a supporter of this. And yeah, it will be a tough call to make that revenue up. And so, yeah, I am voting, I'm not supportive of this.
Well, I'm gonna sit down so you can hear me a little better. You know, I know it sounds like a great idea, but the fact of the matter is, it's a bad idea. It's a poorly written piece of legislation, first of all. The language is so poorly written that even our Attorney General has indicated that it's either gonna take judicial and legislative interpretation to try to put it into account. You know, we gotta remember, every time we start comparing our state to other states, our state isn't like everybody else. We don't have a state income tax. We don't have a corporate income tax. And so that makes a big difference. You know, this would cut essential government functions. And when you think about that 44% of our budget is for education, where do you think it's gonna cut if we have to do that? And we don't have that money to make up whatever number you have. I've even seen it up to $646 million. You know, this cut would hurt our children, our patients, disabled, and our seniors. And why is that? Because 8% of our state expenditures are in those areas. You know, another trap that I think that we have to understand is, you know, that's not going to only affect the state, but also the cities and the counties, because we have a law that says that the cities and counties can't tax what the state can't tax. And so that's really going to hurt them, so that makes it even worse. And another thing that a lot of people don't talk about is, you know, through the Dugard and Matt Michael's efforts, you know, our state got a AAA rating. And if we can't continue to make our budgets and do things financially important and do it the right way, that impacts our AAA rating. And what does that mean? That means when our state, our counties, our cities, our school districts have to borrow money, they're gonna have to pay a higher rate. And it's gonna cost more for them to be able to fund different projects that we have to have. This whole definition of human consumption is not correct. It's a poor definition. It was not thought out well to do that. And I think that from that standpoint, you know, nobody wants to have an income tax, and I think that's where this would be heading. I'd never vote for an income tax. But the last thing, you know, one of the things we forget is who else pays this tax besides us? The tourists. The tourists, oh, I'm sorry, that's red too. Just throw something next time.
I have to say, I'm very torn on this subject too. There's no doubt that there are people that really could benefit from this program. You know, when you look at how we're funded in the school district, we get funded off some title funds based on the amount of free and reduced school lunches we have. And almost every single one of our elementary schools meets Title I funding. So that tells you it's right here in our area. There's no question that it could serve the students that we serve. Unfortunately, I do think that SDEA has come out against it, and so has the South Dakota Associated School Board has come out for the very reasons that there isn't a plan of how to backfill that. I think it's very unfortunate that we hear this all the time during campaigns, and if you remember Governor Nome in her last campaign, she used this as an issue and thought we could do it. Now, there's lots of reasons why it didn't happen, but it shouldn't just be used as to throw out to the people about a good, a good thing. So I think that's very, very unfortunate. I do think this is one of those areas that you probably do need the legislatures and going through the committees and everything to really make sure that the funding is there. There's no question, we do not want to put any of the funding for our public schools and everything that we're doing in jeopardy. So I do not support this, although, like I said, I wish the state could figure out something that we could help even more to those that are most vulnerable.
Okay, and I'm gonna stand. This, originally when this initiated measure was talked about going on the ballot, I did support a food tax cut, and I think it's important that we help those families that are having a hard time making their budget. But with the definition of this bill, and it's all been talked about, human consumption is not defined by state law. However, its common definition includes more than food and drink. So a $35 million haircut would happen if we're not taxing tobacco. And, and seriously, I think tobacco should be taxed, along with cannabis gummies. So this is just a poorly written bill, poorly written initiative. Boy, I must be really loud. A poorly written initiative ballot measure on the ballot, and so I would be definitely opposed to this. But I also, since I have a little bit more time, I want to go back to helping education and parents' choice. I think it's really important that we just not slice and dice that. This is getting to be a issue in our state where parents do want a choice. And the homeschoolers are not for a voucher program. They just aren't. And however that voucher looks, but I do think that there is money that is not being allocated back to the school district that could definitely be used to help our counties. Our counties are in need of help, especially when it comes to children who may not necessarily know how to behave in the public school. So I do think it's important that we consider all aspects, and we definitely could, I believe, find some money inside of the South Dakota budget in order to help fund that.
Okay, so we are back to the voucher system, but more on terms of accountability. So if that voucher system were to pass, should private schools be required to accept all students, including our most vulnerable populations, so those that fall under IDEA, on IEPs, etc., ensuring equal access and accountability for those monies being used, and then ensuring the oversight regulations for homeschool students, because currently there are little to no accountability if you homeschool. There's no requirements for the curriculum, etc. So basically, how are you going to ensure that there's accountability for those monies being received?
Working and teaching at Missouri Valley Christian Academy, we strongly believe that children are first and foremost a gift from God, and they belong to God. They are given to parents, they are trusted to parents to raise these children, to know Him and to love Him. Public schools government is not one or two. Number one is God, number two is the parents. I firmly believe it's the responsibility of parents to raise their children how they see fit. I do not think that government, and again, when we first started Missouri Valley, we had to test our kids just like the public school. And because of homeschooling efforts and things like that, we don't have to do that anymore. And I appreciate that. Because it's the parents' responsibility how to teach their children. I know homeschool kids I know one who was a band teacher here in South Dakota. I know another one who's a teacher in Iowa. I know homeschool children who are engineers. I know homeschool kids that are doctors and lawyers. Just because you're homeschooled doesn't mean you're getting an inadequate education. Because again, it goes back to the parents and their responsibilities. No, I am not for having the government, having the schools determine or test these kids. Again, when it comes to kids with IEPs and stuff, when we bring kids to MVCA, we make sure that they align with our Christian beliefs, first and foremost. And then we look into other things. Do we have kids? We have kids at MVCA who would be on an IEP if they were in public school, but because of small class sizes and the teacher's ability to teach them, they're not.
You know, I think what happens is oftentimes we get in like this, right? I should have you hold this for me. You know, you got to get to the point of this, and the point isn't that parents don't have a choice. They absolutely do have a choice, and I'm glad that they do have a choice. But you know, this whole thing about no accountability, that's just not even right. You know, when you have money that you receive from the federal government or from the state government, as far as that's concerned, and some of that is federal government money, you have accountability. And you know, from the standpoint of the public schools have to take everybody. You know, they don't get a choice of who walks through the door. Whoever walks through the door, they've got to educate. And when you look at this situation here, you know, a parent certainly has a responsibility to raise their children however they want, to whatever education, but there's consequences to whatever decisions that they make. And certainly the child needs to understand that too. If I go to this school, there's going to be some advantages or there's going to be some disadvantages, but that's just what life is. It's all about consequences. So the issue isn't about, you know, whether parent has choice, whether parent has responsibility. It's just that why would the public school students have to be required to be accountable when nobody else does? When somebody comes in that has special needs, where do they send them? They send them to the public schools. And the public schools have done, in my opinion, a great job of providing education. And so when you see these people criticizing the public schools, you know, they're comparing apples to oranges as to what they're doing.
Sounded like there was a helicopter hovering over us. I could say a lot of things that already been said here, but I think the most dangerous thing about what you're asking us is the accountability question. And to really think that given the money per the student with absolutely no accountability, in which other ways in our lives can we just get money like that without accountability? It's a constitutional right that our children receive a free and appropriate education. And so it's very important that as a state, that's our foundation for our future. We use that education to predict different things. But I think it's very, very frightening, to be honest, when I hear about no accountability. And also, I think this is where separation of church and state comes in too, and there's a reason for that. There's no question. I have a unique experience that I placed my child with a disability in Sacred Heart School. I parentally placed him. That was my choice. When I placed him there were no guarantee of services, although he probably had the greatest needs of services of any child at Sacred Heart. But I thought it was important of the environment that my son would be in, and the faith environment was very important. He happened to excel in that area. And we used experts from Sioux Falls and some different experts that would come down and make sure that he was doing okay. But
I will tell you that it's important, it's already difficult enough for the public schools to educate all with special ed. If you look at it, it's gonna be a crisis as far as the special education funding. And some schools have had to go towards the extraordinary funding with some extraordinary. You're gonna find places like Yankton that aren't necessarily extraordinary, that are gonna be needing to use that fund. And if we funnel all the special education in the public, it'll just exacerbate it.
Okay, once again, I am the only one up here who is not a teacher or a school board member or, but I did raise 4 children, and they are grown, and I raised 2 boys with an IEP, and they were in special ed. And as a matter of fact, one of our sons was told that he would never ever be a successful individual. And with the help of a public school teacher who cared about him and took him aside, and mom and dad who spent 2 hours every evening, he is a very successful young man. And both of our boys are, well, all 4 of our children are, as a matter of fact. So teachers at every level, this is about children, parents, and teachers, and choosing what is right for your family. Once again, homeschool children, when we were in the legislature, the homeschoolers did not want any funding. They do not want any strings attached to any kind of money that is received. As a matter of fact, they don't want any money. They want to homeschool their children. My daughter homeschools her children. She doesn't want any funding. She wants to be able to homeschool her children, faith-based, and raise her children and give them an education by her choosing. She doesn't want the funding. But I think it's important for those parents that do want to send their child to a private school, that they would have access to some dollars that are available through some sort of a tax credit that other states are introducing. So once again, I think it's important that we keep in mind the number one person who this is important to is the child and the parent and the teachers.
First thing to realize that when Julie talks about, when Lauren talks about this extra money, this $5 million that's sitting there right now, that's really tax money that they didn't have to pay because we gave them the tax credit, correct? Yeah, so basically it's still money we're paying that they don't have to pay. So they got that benefit. I wouldn't mind giving them some money to the private schools, but they have to then follow the same rules that we do. If they're not gonna follow those rules, then no. Many people pick their choice to go ahead because it is faith-based, fine, you do that. But if you're faith-based, that's okay. If you want money, you have to follow the same rules the public school does. That means if you have a special ed kid, you may have to educate them too. And right now, no private school has to take any special ed kids. Now, they have done things like Sarah has done. I know Sacred Heart has done that several times. But they do that by choice. Most of them do not do that. You don't see any of those kids at O'Gorman High School or the Lutheran School in Sioux Falls. They won't be there. The public schools have to take everybody, and we do a really good job.
Okay, so teacher pay continues to be a topic every year in South Dakota. In 21-22 and 22-23, South Dakota continued to rank number 49 in teacher salary. How would you help raise teacher salary while ensuring competitiveness among neighboring states? And then to piggyback off of that, another member asked, so like how much the new, signage that the schools have cost, and how does that, enhance education as reading, writing, arithmetic, and enhance teacher salaries. So I guess, is there a way to make the the schools accountable for how they're spending the money that they're given to help teacher salaries.
Is that a multiple choice question?
Kind of, I don't know. I'm trying to get as much into one.
You're doing a great job.
As we can.
You know, I will tell you, I think that, you know, experience really helps in dealing with educational issues, and I think that's an advantage that I've had, because I've been on the education committee, particularly this last year. You know, we passed something very historic, and that was House Bill 1048, and that was a bill that was brought initially by the education department about dealing with teacher pay, and 4 of us from the House and a couple from the Senate decided that the bill just wasn't getting done what we really wanted to get done, and that is when the legislature in the last 2 or 3 years, we made sure that we gave more than what the state allows is required for teacher pay, because we're tired of being down at the bottom, as Paul said, with Mississippi, and so a bunch of us got together, and the 6 of us got together, and we rewrote the law, and I think it's really a historic law from this standpoint. Number 1, it says this, that 97% of all the money that the legislature gives for teacher pay, you know where it goes? Teacher pay, right? And it also doesn't impact the fringe benefits that is being negotiated. And that was a real fight, and it came down to a conference committee that I was sitting on, and we were able to get that done with the help of the governor. And so you have to set this bottom line, this baseline that nobody can mess around with. And some of the school districts, and Yankton was not one of them. Yankton had no problem on this, but we have some of the smaller school districts that were taking the money that should have went for pay for these smaller schools and use it for other type of expenditures. So I think that's what you have to do, is you start from there. And I think it was really a good piece of legislation that we got done in that regard. Over the years, there's been a real change in the attitudes as it relates to teacher pay. And because you see everybody, wherever runs for the legislature, always talks about education, and then she brings that red thing again.
I remember when I first got on the school board, we would have listening sessions where people from the state would come in, and I was new, and I was thinking, this is really exciting, we're gonna hear all this input. And there was a noticeable pall in the room, no question. I'm like, what's going on? It was that teachers were tired of being asked what their opinion are, and then nothing got done. So we're very, very appreciative of the work that you did, Mike, as far as that funding. And I don't wanna get into all the details, but Mike said it, you know, with that bill, there's all sorts of parameters you have to have, and what money you can spend here, and what percentage this needs to have, and what percentage that needs to have. And I can tell you with complete honesty, I've been on the negotiation committee many a times, and I can tell you if we can give it, we're gonna give it, if it goes. But if you notice, it was put into law that they were supposed to have all these increases, and not every year there has been those increases. And it puts the school districts in a very difficult position. So we need to keep competitive, need focus. Yankton, I think we're doing a great job as far as we're getting exceptional teachers, we're getting people that want to come into our district. And I think it has a lot to do with the teaching that's already happening. People want to be a part of it. If I can bring up one point about the that little slip in the end about, I'm guessing you're talking about the new communication report. Okay, reports. One, I will tell you, one of the things I do like about that, if you remember, when we have strategic plannings, communication came out as number 1. And that is a way we communicate with our students, our teachers, our parents, in a very viable way. And you can only spend a certain amount of money on capital items. You can't, of the general fund. So there's different funds that you can spend out of, and that didn't come out of teacher pay. That came out of an entirely different fund.
That came out of capital outlay, right, Dr. Kendall? Because he had that in his state of education. So capital outlay is where the electronic billboards came out. First of all, my good teachers, which Yankton, once again, I graduated from Yankton High School, got a great education here, and Yankton School District, in my estimation and in my opinion, is one of the best in the state. Number one, a a teacher is so important to the foundation of our state. We have to compensate our teachers. They lay the groundwork for our future generations. They are who our children are spending the majority of their time with each and every day. I had great teachers in Yankton High School. Mr. Harns was one of them. He was one of my favorite teachers. Absolutely, 100% supported the piece of legislation that came through the House to increase teachers' pay. And the fact that it really didn't do a lot for Yankton School District because you already checked off all boxes. But in those smaller schools that were not paying or compensating their teachers accordingly, it did force them to come up to standards. I think that when we're looking at our educators in the state of South Dakota, we have to basically make sure that A, they are paid well, B, that we make sure that we keep their pension plan solid so that we can compensate them into the years to reward them for all the years that they spent educating our children, and to make sure that they have the benefits that they need. And I completely 100% support that.
This is one of the reasons I'm running. This is not the first time the state legislature has set a salary. Last time they did it was in 2016. And at that point, they said, okay, we're gonna give you a raise every year. It never happened. Now, they had been better in these later years, but here's one problem that they aren't talking about. When they say teachers, that's it. Now, who do you consider a teacher? Someone who works with students that they learn. That doesn't include the librarian. Doesn't include the counselor when they come in and talk to a class full of kids. Doesn't include the special aides who sit and work with those kids one-on-one. Aren't they teachers too? It doesn't include any of those people. They are not part of the package. Now, Yankton has been very fortunate. We've had opt-outs. First opt-out, they argued a little bit. We've never had another argument over it. We are one of 66 school districts in the state that have opt-outs. Yankton is one of 12 who paid more than what the base is that the state has started. So we have to find more money for them. All of them. Which means cutting some of the other stuff that may be in the state. Look at what some of the things that are going on with the state. You guys all see it. Do we need to have a race car on TV with our name on it?
I'm gonna really quickly say with Mike, what he said, it's true, I talked with the teacher, and yeah, there's a school district that I know, that didn't go for teacher salaries. They said, oh, your insurance went up, so we're gonna use that money to help pay for your, insurance. So, none of those teachers saw a raise in that school district. I'm just gonna say this, how many of you are teachers out there, and how many of you went into teaching because you were gonna get rich? You laugh because you know that. We go into teaching because we love the look that a child gets when they learn something new or they get something. That's why we go into teaching. If we were to compensate teachers appropriately to what they put in, the time, the effort, the worry, the concern, the weekends. I mean, how many times have I gone by the public schools and seen cars outside the schools on the weekends, late at night? There's not enough money in the world to adequately compensate our teachers for what they put in to their classrooms and to their students. As the state senator for District 18, if there's any bill that comes before me that deals with funding for education, I'm going to ask, one, how does it affect the student in the classroom? Is it helping that student? And two, how is it helping the teacher who's in that classroom helping that student? Those are the two most important entities there are. And like Julie said, teachers spend more time with your kids than you do sometimes. I'm going to look at those two important entities. And if I don't see a direct correlation or a direct positive influence, teacher pay is one of those. I will fight for teacher pay. I'm a teacher. I've been there, I've done that. I know what you go through. You need to be compensated for what you do each and every day.
Okay, we're gonna sneak one more question in. And so this question says, my 2-year-old granddaughter practiced a lockdown at her daycare. This is outrageous. What are you going to do to address the safety of our children in South Dakota? So I guess school safety. Final question. Yes.
Okay. This is something really near and dear. I worry so much about our students right now and what they're learning, and I think that's really traumatic for a 2-year-old. And sometimes I think that's even more traumatic for the parents to know that their child has to go through that. School safety is utmost important. If you've noticed in the last few years, we have done some considerable projects in our school district for school safety in almost every single one of our buildings. When you talk about money that we could be spending on teacher pay or anything like that, but we are, because of the situation right now with funding, or because of the threats, that we have to spend a good portion of our money on keeping our students safe. I'm guessing you as teachers spend a good portion of your year, especially at the beginning of the year, teaching your kids the drills and what they need to do, and probably very difficult ways to do it without scaring them. But the reality is, we need to keep our students safe, and that's important. So I would say that unfortunately, we would have to keep and maintain what we're already doing to keep our students safe. There is nothing that's gonna stop somebody that has, destruction on their mind. But the most we can do is help out with some of these safety features. But also, if you remember, which I am honestly I am most proud about, is when we did our strategic planning, we put mental health wellness as one of our top priorities, because we know that is extremely important for our students and their welfare.
I know, isn't it a sad case for any state that we have to have 2-year-olds having lockdown drills? I think it's unfortunate, but if it's one way we can keep our children safe, then we have to explain to them the importance of it. I do know, once again, from the State of the Education address that Dr. Kindle had, that Yankton Public School is taking those steps to ensure that the students are safe. But if you're extremely concerned about the safety of your child, and once again, it's a huge responsibility on the teachers, but if it's a parent's choice to educate that child at home or educate that child in a different environment, then they should be able to have that choice if it's causing them severe anxiety for the safety of their child. I think that, unfortunately, once again, the times that we live in, and I just attended a seminar this morning talking about mental health. 1 out of every individual in South Dakota, 1 out of every 5, has some form of mental health need. It is unfortunate, once again, but I think it is a sign of the times, and if there is training that needs to happen to keep our children safe, I would strongly encourage that.
I was fortunate enough to be around administrators who took a very serious attitude toward this. We've always had in Yankton the ability to try to do something, and they've done well with it. There are school systems that don't, because they don't have the money. So there has to be money done for them, and a lot of it is federal on this level. But at the same time, you have to take in consideration that it's the teacher in the front line and the students. And when you talk about mental health being a priority, it has to be a priority. And there's that saying, and I've seen some of the posters at the high school and middle school, if you know something, say something. Parents, if you know something, say something. A lot of this stuff could be stopped before it ever gets there if people would recognize it. Maybe I hate to say this, but I'm gonna say it. Guns in South Dakota are pretty well regulated. But I was at a gun show and I saw a parent buy his 14-year-old son an AK-47. It happened, I was there. You can shake your head all you want. And because Dad said, I'm buying this for the kid. No locks or anything else that went with it. He didn't buy that. It happened right out here in town. But a 14-year-old doesn't need an AK, silent gun. But it was there. And they bought it. But people who know something is going to go on, you gotta stop it. And that's one of the big things in mental health, the bullying and everything else. And the only ones who can do that are some of the kids and the parents. Know what your kid's doing. I don't care whether you're homeschooled or whether you're there. You just gotta know.
I would honestly say it was a sad day for me when Missouri Valley Christian Academy, we had to lock our doors. It was a sad day for me because it became reality that, yeah, we have to buzz people in. And unfortunately, that's the state of our society now. And again, I will agree with many of the things that have already been said. I mean, the front line is the teacher. And I know from personal experience, when that first lockdown drill that we practice in the fall with our kindergartners, it is upsetting to some of them. And it takes a long time for the teacher to spend days preparing them, doing the lockdown drill, and then explaining it to them as well. And it is scary. But again, it's those teachers on that front line who are doing this and helping these kids through this. And I go back to what Mr. Harm said as well, mental health. Making sure that our kids have access to the wellness, the mental wellness that they need. Especially in this day and age, again, cell phones. When I was in high school, if I had something to say about somebody, it took a couple class periods to get to that person, or maybe even the whole day. Now it's instantaneous. And also multiple times. And that can be hard on kids, very hard on kids. And then also, you know, I lost my train of thought here, but again, just making it's our state of our society now. And again, just making sure that kids have that mental health ability or have that access to mental health. And now I remember what I was gonna say. Again, going back, see something, say something. How many times do we have an incident and kids will come, well, I heard him say that, or I heard him this morning say he was gonna do it, or if there was a post on Facebook that, you know, he was gonna do it after the fact. If you see something, read something, say something, please.
You know, I look across this crowd and I see some gray hairs, I see some that don't have any hair, and I see some who should have gray hair, but they got a really good beautician. And I will tell you this, those of us that I'm referring to, how many of you remember crawling underneath your desk when there was a Cuban Missile Crisis and preparing for that? And you know, I figured the only reason they did that, it'd be easier to count the bodies, because if there was a nuclear blast, they would take us all anyway, you know. But you know, the whole thing about the safety, obviously, is the #1 priority of any school system. You know, the education is really the second part, right? And so, you know, when we look at it during the 22 years that I was on the school board, you know, safety was always an issue, but it was always a changing. What was we having to deal with? I mean, it's just been how many years that we have locked doors? Otherwise, a few years ago, you could walk into any school, any door to get in, and things are changing. And our kids are not stupid. They understand what's going on. you can't hardly turn on the TV anymore, can you? And on something happening like that, our kids are know what's going on. And so, you know, is the mental health part of it important? Absolutely that it is, but I think we also have to recognize that our kids understand what's going on. You know, if I had my choice on some of these things, I'd get rid of these video games. They're always shooting up somebody and doing some of those type of things. I think that would be very helpful.
One more, or?
Yeah, we're gonna close, but,
Yeah, let's do it.
so we'll move on to closing statements. And we just wanna thank all of our candidates for coming this evening. So 2 minutes for closing statements.
Well, once again, thank you for coming. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to come and hear us talk about our points. The one thing I want to leave you with is, you know, running for the House of Representatives was something that was just put upon me. And serving the past 2 years in the state legislature has been nothing short of a complete and total honor to represent Yankton County, District 18. Just because I love the people of this district. This is my home, and you have to be an extremely well-rounded individual. School is extremely important. Once again, the education of our young people lays the foundation for the future of South Dakota. And so any educator, in my book, deserves to be respected. But we also have to remember that safety, tourism, agriculture, transportation, the veterans, our healthcare, and our counties, just to name a few of the areas that are covered in legislature. And we have to take care of all those areas because we have to take care of you. We have to take care of our citizens because we want to make sure that South Dakota remains the greatest state in this nation. And it would be a great honor of mine to continue to do that for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. I want to thank the YA for sponsoring this. I think this is one of the first time, and I hope you keep doing it. It should be done. I think we can tell this is an education topic in here. Know that I am an educator. I lived out in Pierre and saw how they did bills. We used to sit and go and watch them. And it's changed a lot. They now all have computers, so they're easy to get a hold of. But funding is funding. And sometimes somebody else has to take a cut. And I'd be willing to fight for that cut to get new teachers more money and education. And sometimes that may be what it comes down to. Vouchers, they will destroy South Dakota public education. I don't care what anybody says. We can't afford that. I mean, it's just like, think about it. All of a sudden, what they're not talking about is if we take that money and give it to them, they take more kids. The school has less money. So who's going to be teaching? Right now, out of all the states around us, we're the poorest paid. So we have to come up with some more money to make it so teachers will stay here. I know students that can't come back here. I have one that's over in Iowa. She'd take a $20,000 cut to come here. So why would she? I know several other teachers that have gone to Nebraska. There was a couple from Tyndall a couple of years ago who moved to North Dakota, lived in Aberdeen, and drove across the border and had more money. Same as for a lot of teachers sitting in this room. And I don't want them to leave. We want the good people here. So please stay.
I would also like to echo thank you to the YDA for doing this, and I hope you have more of these. Thank you to you as well for being here tonight. And also thank you to my fellow candidates as well, stepping forward to not only to run, but also to be here to answer questions. Some people have said to me, Lauren, you look like you're on a mission. Currently, I am on a mission. And that's you, the voters of District 18. If you are that farmer who's trying to build a processing plant to utilize your crops, if you're that welder from Lesterville who's working at Wilson Trailers wanting to buy a home or build a home, but taxes are too high or spending is too much. If you're that daycare provider over by Wakanda who wants to expand because she's got a waiting list, but the regulations in Pier are prohibiting her from doing that. If you're the county commissioner sitting here wondering where are we going to get the money to pay for these mandates that the state is putting on us. Or if you're the teacher sitting here right now probably thinking, I got papers to grade, I got stuff I got to get done, I want to listen to you. I want to listen to you, I want to engage you, I want to hear what your concerns are, I want to hear what your issues are. And I want to take those concerns and I want to take those issues and I want to go to Pier and I want to solve them for you along with my other legislators. Thank you for this time tonight. Vote on November 5th or earlier, but just go vote. It's the duty of American citizens to go and vote. And if there's something here tonight that you thought agree with me with, or you think, I'm not that bad of a candidate, please vote for me, Lauren Nelson, for Senate on November 5th. Thanks.
I too want to thank everyone for coming out. I think this should have been done a long time ago to really deal with this issue. We can talk about what you can do when you get to the legislature, but I'll just tell you this, the 32 years that I've dealt with in education, 22 years of it on the school board, and 10 years in the legislature, I think that it's easy to say that we got a lot of things done. Remember this used to be the high school, remember we didn't have a high school, I was on the school board when those things got done. When you look at the different things that we do in the legislature, you always have to remember this, that if you want to get something done, you got to have 36 votes in the House, 17 votes in the Senate, you got to get that one important vote, and that's the governor. And during the time that I've been up there, I've been able to get a lot of things done and fight for our schools and doing things. And I have good relationships with the superintendents that I've had during the time that I've served. And I think we've been in constant contact and with the teachers too, as well as what their concerns are. And so when I tell you that I've been for education, I'm for education. I have been there for each and every one of you in that regard. Anybody that tells you that there's a bunch of money in Pier just sitting there and we just don't know what to do with it, they don't understand the budget. They don't understand the finances, but that's just not what it is. Because every year we have to fight for the big three. Educators, state employees, and healthcare providers are all there wanting some more money, right? And we have to deal with those. And then we have the counties who are desperately in need, and then we have this in the cities as well. There isn't anybody out there that's got a bank account saying we don't need any more money, because they do need it. And they're doing a lot of great things. One of the things that I do feel that's happened, I've noticed when we've been in Pier, is how much everybody works so hard for the amount of money that they're making, and that goes across the board. There isn't anybody getting overly paid in any of the jobs that we've talked about here. And so I think it's really important for us to realize that. So I think during the time that I've been up there, I've got things done. I will continue to work in that regard, and she still has that red piece.
Maybe next time I'll give you 3 minutes.
I appreciate it. I'll take 1 minute of yours.
I'll add my thanks to all you. I'm really proud of you for doing this because this is just a really important thing to do, to really highlight education. And it's your livelihood and it's the future. And I appreciate that you do it because it's important. There's no question that's why I jumped in the race. I jumped in the race because I'm a public school advocate. And it's important that we maintain, especially in our district, the exceptional district we have. If you don't know it, guys, we are an exceptional district in this state. Dr. Kindle gets questions all the time about what we're doing here, and we're kind of the leaders. And I am just so fortunate that I get to be on the board really when these hardworking teachers and administrators are doing the work and letting us help them do that. And so it's really been a great deal of pride. There's no question, again, of the support I would have and how education would be very, very important. And obviously there are other issues. And I think that's just the whole point, is that we need to listen, right? As Paul was speech and debate coach, I remember you when you were the coach. I was from Beersford, and one of the things that I had is when we debated, we always had to debate affirmative and negative and switch sides, right? And it taught me that there's always two sides, and you better be ready to have the other side and advocate for the other side and see the potential pitfalls in the other side. I've never had to run for a race that has been affiliated, and so it's really about the person. And I urge you to think about, I think I offer a very moderate voice. I clearly don't have an agenda. I'm not with another group of legislators throughout the state or candidates throughout the state that are interested in moving on to the agenda. I'm interested in just bringing forth what's best for the district. And that is by listening. I know I don't know it all. I certainly don't know all the truths, but I do know that I will listen and try to do the best for the district.
Well, thank you so much. I'll use this microphone this time. I'm sorry if you weren't able to hear me at the beginning of the forum. I'm Andrea Stanishek, co-president of the Yankton Education Association. My other co-president is up at the door, Lana Davison. Lots of my YEA members helped me out here, so thank you so much to those YEA members. I'd like to close the forum by thanking all of the candidates for their participation in our democratic process. And thank you to Chelsea Hauger for being our moderator this evening. Thank you, Stacy Reagan and her mother, for our refreshments that we have out there by the entrance. And last of all, to you, the voters, just remember to vote on or before Tuesday, November 5th, and have a great night.